From the racing capital of the world, Indianapolis, Indiana, welcome back to the greatest spectacle in podcasting, the Seventh Gear Over Rev Show. Presented to you this week by our great friends and partners over at KrausMeats.com. Always top quality since 1923 for all of your outdoor grilling needs as we get into the late summer and early fall. Make sure you check out KrausMeats.com for their new lower prices to get your order in before the weather turns too cold to grill. Also, we want to thank our great partners over at Respect Your Package and Dick Carriers, makers of that supreme high-quality breathable men's underwear complete with ball bustier technology, and they are respectfully scandalous yet unapologetic. As you see on the screen there, you can go to their website to place your order using the promo code RESPECT7 for your 20% discount on your entire order. So thanks to those both. And I got to tell you, Seventh Gear Over Rev fans, we have a guest of all guests. This is a guy that I've been dying to talk to on the show for a long time. He's a good friend of mine. We've known each other since 2007, I want to say. He's been a former Trans Am champion in 1992. He's won the 24 Hours of Daytona. He's won a couple of 12 Hours of Sebrings. He's been racing for over 50 years. The guy is still going nonstop. I have the utmost respect for this guy. I like to call him Black Jack, and you either like him or you hate him, but I, for one, love this guy. Ton of respect for him. He's been a huge help for me, and I'm so thrilled to have him on this week's show. The one and only, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jack Baldwin. Jack, how are you today, buddy? Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a nice intro. That's good. Speed Sport News, right?
Yeah.
He used to call me the Georgia Bulldog. So there's a new one, Blackjack.
Well, and I got to kind of set the table for how Jack and I got to know each other. For all of you Seventh Gear Over Rev fans that don't know Jack or don't know the connection here. Back in, I think it was 2007 was when Jack and I first met, and I was working as the assistant track manager at the Audubon Country Club up in Joliet, Illinois, and the club had decided to host its first ever spectator event, and they had, I think it was HSR for the vintage cars, and this was one of the last years of the Pro Formula Atlantic series, so they brought the Pro Atlantic cars out and so forth, and in my role as the assistant track manager, I would do a lot of the track intros, and Jack had never been there before, so they brought Jack to me and said, hey, would you show Jack around the track? And I'm like, I would be happy to, because at the time I think I held the track record in one of the classes of cars there or whatever. So I drove Jack around and showed him what there was to know and see, and that was kind of where we connected. And I think, Jack, if I remember right, you went out and won your race that weekend. So I'd like to think that even if you didn't win, I think you ran pretty well. And it was nice to know that I was able to help out a legend, because I had already known about Jack. I was like, holy crap, you're giving me Jack Baldwin? The guy's a freaking champion, and he's won a bazillion races, and you're letting me show him around. So I was thrilled to be able to do that. And then I hadn't seen Jack in a long time after that, until I was running the World Challenge Series when Jack was running a GTS Cayman and killing it. And then I had some issues with the clutch problems and whatnot, and Jack was more than happy to help out however he could to make sure that we didn't miss anything. And then I saw him again just recently back at Road Atlanta, kind of his backyard, and he was visiting with his old teammate and buddy Scott Pruitt. So that's the connection. But again, I am so thrilled to have Jack back here to just sit and chat a little bit. So that was the connection. So you did well that weekend at the Audubon, didn't you?
Well, you gave me some real good tips on how to get around there. So it's sort of like cheating, I mean, you showed me just how to. This is what you got to. I said, and I just soaked all that up and just went out there and did it. So
well, it's
I appreciate it.
Even now,
and I had a lot, and that was the way you laid that out. That was like, this guy knows what he's doing. So that was cool. That was very
rock on.
good.
See, I got to help
That
the
was the
champion
beginning
win
of a
again.
neat era. Go ahead. That was the beginning of a neat era. That was the beginning of the. I think 2007. That was when we were getting ready to go into the Cayman Inter Series years.
Right, exactly. And then you were killing it, in World Challenge those years in 15, 16 when I was running there with you. And man, it's just, where do you even start? It's like I think back, and I mean I remember knowing about you before I was really driving a lot, just from all the Trans Am stuff, because that era that you were in Trans Am was sort of my jam. The late '80s, early '90s there. and all those guys, whether it was you or Dallenbach or Pruitt or I mean any of those guys, and I was like, I knew that you had that reputation of the kind of the Georgia Bulldog, like you said, that you were coming no matter what, and if you didn't get out of my way, I was going to move you out of my way, kind of a deal. There's so, and that's one of the things that I've always loved about you. In fact, and I didn't really realize this until much later on, because I always the impression that I had of you, Jack, it was you were sort of like the Dale Earnhardt of road racing. And then I find out later on that you actually ran in the IROC series with Dale Earnhardt and had a
Yeah,
great race with him there. So how how freaking cool was that?
it was really cool. Dale and I became real good friends.
I can see why.
He was somebody that I really respected and spent a lot of time with him at his house, at his shop, watching Junior work on his car to get it ready for a Friday night race back in the day. And, Dale and I had some really good races in IROC. And IROC was to me like to me, I always wanted to do it. So when I got a chance to do it, and I got a chance to do it twice because they voted me back. And I just loved it. I loved the ovals. They said, oh, you probably don't want to do a road course. I said, no, I want to do the ovals. And Dale and I, we did a lot of stuff together. I have a lot of great IROC stories. The guys were good. Junior was good. Alistair Jr. was really good. Davey Allison was really good. Davey taught me how to get around Darlington. And that was important, and Dick Trickle was fantastic. All those guys. Those were great years. And, you know, it was like you say in Trans Am, the 80s. A lot of people say that was the greatest era in sport road racing, sports car racing. I think the racing now is pretty good, but back in those days, I mean, you compare the cars. There's a big deal. There's a big difference with safety, but there's not that much difference of speed. I mean, the cars were 2,600 pounds and they had about 650 horsepower, and the race was 1 hour, and it was light your hair on fire and go out there and do it. But you had to manage your tires, and you had to manage. You knew there was going to be a caution with 10 to go, and
Right.
you knew that you needed to have you know something ready for that. That was the whole thing right there. And so those were great years. There's 15 guys that could win a race at every given
Right.
track, and I was honored to drive against all of those guys that were really good. And we raced hard. Um, and you mentioned getting out of the way. It's like if you were running second or third and you couldn't you couldn't hold on to that guy in front of you, and you were losing, and you didn't had to lose a little bit, right? So you come off a corner, and the diameter of that tire spun one time, two times, three times. Well, the distance of that circumference, right? So now you're half a car back. The guys behind you, they can't afford to lose track of the leader. So you either got to you either had to keep it stay in place, or move, or they would move you. Now here's the difference. In today they wreck each other. They just wreck each. Back in those days, we didn't wreck each other. We moved people out of the way. It was a different deal. So you really didn't wreck the guy. I mean, I used to get out. Buzz, he would get out of the car and walk around. My average on tire rings were 7, you know, but I ran the same body work on the car behind me for 2 years. So, you couldn't afford to wreck the car. That was the thing. I remember one time at Watkins Glen, I was racing with Buzz and I was driving the Skull Bandit, and these little lessons. As you go along. Buzz says, "Hey, you got a minute?" We walked. He says, "Come on, let's take a walk." We walked in his transporter, and back in those days, the transporters were a little different. The cars are up on ramps, and it was kind of a big box, right? So we walk in there. Buzz says, "Look around. What do you see?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "That's right. You wrecked this car, and we're going home. I got no spare parts." You know? That's and you couldn't just go buy another car. Like now, you wreck the car, you go buy another one. You just and it's good and bad. I mean, there's a whole story behind the homologated new race cars with the factory built and stuff like that. But
Sure.
I mean, you couldn't just go out and get a car. I mean, if you had a backup car, great. But if after that, there was not a car. You have to go buy somebody's car, and it wasn't your car. And here we go. So you had to learn to race hard, get the job done, and not tear the car up. And that's really what it came down to. And I've told a lot of young guys that, it comes down to that. There's a race team, everyone plays a position. Driver plays a position, everyone plays a position. It comes time to do your job. A lot of work's gone into it. A lot of logistics, a lot of work, a lot of testing, a lot of whatever it is, a lot of money. When it comes time to do your job, you have to do your job. And and you might know Harry Haggard. Do you ever know that name, Harry
Oh
Haggard?
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So my first and second Camel GT wins were in 83, 82 and 83, driving with Joe Vardy, the Western
Hmm.
Airlines Mazda, RX-7.
Yeah.
And we were at Sebring, should have won it, didn't win it, had a tire problem late. It wasn't really my fault, but in the first quarter of the race, I got outside, and at Sebring, I've run all the circuits, all the 5 different circuits there were, and now it's one, but there used to be a lot of different circuits. And
Right.
I got outside, probably a little impatient, went to the outside, didn't think about the groove, got my left front tire into some marbles, bounced it off the wall. All right. It wasn't terrible, but set us back. I went out there and got the lead back. It took hours, but I got it back. And we ended up losing that race by a few minutes. And it was a tire problem. And I don't think it was the wreck, but I did hit the wall. So one of the best things that happened to me early on was I got a call on like a Monday, and Joe says, "Look, Harry's going to call you, and don't talk, listen, and just listen." He's not happy. Okay, this is this was pivotal, and so he says, Jack, he says, we work on the car. This is how he said it. It was kind of interesting. He says, we work on the car. We do all this stuff, and then we take it out there and we stick in a box. There's a box out there. It's a painted box. And then we need somebody. We need somebody, a driver, somebody to get in that car and go out and whatever you guys do. I don't know. You run around the racetrack and run around and race the car. I don't know. Bring it. When you're done with that, I need you to bring the car back and give the car back to me. And then there was a hesitation. He said, "If you can do that, you can drive this car. And if you can't, I'll find somebody who can. Are we clear?" And I never forgot that conversation. And that's what it comes down to right there. That's it. Get the job done. Can you get the job done without tearing up the equipment? And that's really what the magic is. How good are you?
Right.
I mean, a lot of guys can drive fast, but can you actually get it done without tearing the car up? And the crew doesn't want to hear it. They don't. You don't want to hear about it if something falls off the car. It's like something fell off the car. It wasn't my. So that's really what
That's
it comes
very
down to with these guys. And so the good, really good guys can do that, and that's the magic. And you look at the great drivers; they were able to do that. And the ones that are, that can't tear equipment up, their career is pretty short. And so there's a fine line between being that tough guy and bumping and grinding. Back in those days, we didn't have race control. We dealt with it. And
right. You dealt with it
sometimes we dealt
yourselves.
with it on pit road. Sometimes we dealt with it in the pits. I mean, I can't say that I haven't dragged guys out of their race car. I can't say that.
Can neither confirm nor
Um,
deny.
but I have looked at a lot of guys and said, "Hey, how do you want to do it? You want to race dirty or you want to race clean? I'll race you clean or I'll race you dirty, but you decide, and I'll go from there because I'm
Right.
not going to put up with you. I'm not going to put up with it." So I feel like I was a pretty clean racer. I mean, it's a thing about winning with honor. Did you win? Did you did you take the guy out to win the race, or did you win the race? So
I
you know,
totally agree with you on that, Jack. And kind of to your point, about racing the right way. And, guys can be fast, but they wind up ruining the car. They wreck the car. They tear it up. They do whatever. That year, when I came to you at Laguna, because we had those clutch problems, I had a teammate in another base Cayman, and he was this young hot shoe kid that thought he was faster than shit, right? And we were kind of neck and neck in qualifying and stuff, but he DNF'd probably half of the races that season. And that race at Laguna on the opening lap, I think it was our standing start race, he went for a bonsai move going 3 wide into the corkscrew and took out 2 other cars and basically had to have a crew chief from across the paddock not come and rip his head off after the fact. And
hmm
I mean, I was able to, maybe run, rub door handles and that kind of thing, and maybe get a donut on the side of the car here and there, and thread the needle. But I didn't have a single DNF that whole season, and we wound up. I mean, we didn't win the championship, but we finished in the top 5. And it was like that was one of those kind of to your point about guys that can be fast, but are they going to crash the car? Are they going to be able to bring it back and know how to race the right way?
well, the thing is, if you can do it and not crash the car, that means you know how to do it, and
Right.
versus not knowing how to do it. Going up there and causing a big wreck means all that means is you don't know what you're doing. If you're
Correct.
are you going to race, you're going to wreck. I mean, are you qualified? Are you capable of doing this? Not everybody is capable. I remember when I did a little NASCAR. I did some NASCAR. So I did the IROC. I did some Bush,
Right.
and I knew a lot of guys in NASCAR. I mean, I knew pretty much all the guys really back in those years, and I did a lot of coaching and helped guys on road courses and drove Terry Labonte and all that stuff. And I remember a guy one time, he told me, he says, the question that we ask is, can you do it? Are you capable? Can you do it? In other words, can you take a green flag and a checkered flag? Can you do it? It doesn't matter where you finish. Can you do it? Can you qualify for the race? And back in those years, people went home. So can you qualify? Are you capable of qualifying? That's one. You make the field, doesn't matter where you made it, you're in. Can you start and can you finish? The next question is, can you finish in the top 20? Can you? Because if you can't finish in the top 20, finish in the top 10. And if you can't finish in the top 10, you can't finish in the top 5. It means you'll never be able to win a race. So those are the questions that each driver has to, you know, prove himself that I am capable of doing this. And it's an interesting question because, and I've told young guys, I said, all I want you to do is start and finish. I don't care where you finish. I don't care where you finish. I don't care if you finish last, but can you do it? We have to know
Can
you
you
can do
finish?
this before we can go to the next step. So
That's right.
it's sort of like you knew what you were doing. So in your case, you took care of the car and you guys ended up, taking what you could take, and a top 5 finish at the end of the year, points wise, is pretty darn good, really. You know, so I mean that's where it's like that in every sport. Can you do it? And racing
Right.
is has its unique parts to it. It was different in those days. Now you have race control and a lot of stuff's different. You know, Back in those years, it was
Yeah.
pretty kind of whatever. You had to
Well,
race. There
it
wasn't
was.
no there wasn't no there wasn't no gold, silver, bronze guy. You pulled into gate, you had to race anybody who was there.
You're right. Yeah. None of that bronze, silver crap. So actually, Jack, spikes kind of a question for me with you because I had this conversation with my crew chief a while back, the guy that was crew chief on that Porsche that I raced in World Challenge. He and I were both kind of the opinion that drivers today, be it young guys or not the youngest guys, but just getting into whatever, whether it's NASCAR, road racing, whatever, are not kind of, I guess, how can I phrase this? Maybe not as tough as drivers maybe of your era, guys like you or Dale Earnhardt or Pruitt or whomever. Do you see things kind of that way too, or do you see it a little bit differently?
I agree with that. You know, cars are they're homologated cars, factory built cars. Nothing wrong with them. They're very good, much safer. But they've got a lot of creature comforts. I mean, I never drove a car with paddle. I do well. I did with in a world sports car, but in a GT car, paddle shifter, air conditioned seats, comfortable seats. I remember a kid asked me one time. They said, "What did you do back in your day? What did you do?" Well, I trained in the heat. I trained every day from noon to 3 o'clock,
As
out
did I.
jogging in the heat, not in the shade, in the heat, and riding a bike, jogging, doing stuff, you know, in getting used to the heat. We raced at Phoenix. I got there a week early, drove around. The only thing I slept in air conditioning, but everything else, my rental car, I'd turn the air conditioner off to run the windows down. It was brutal. You had to be ready for it. And the kid asked me, "So what did you guys do?" I said, "We drank a bunch of water and shut the hell up." I mean,
Right,
hey,
right.
that's what I've run races where I've come down pit road and they had a bucket of water there to throw on me. Literally drop the net, 5 gallons of water, boom, lift your head up so you don't get it on your goggles, and throw it on you and drive off. At Mid Ohio, I used just before the race. I knew where the hose was, and I'd run up, and they had a bank there. I'd run up, lay upside down on the bank, have them squirt to me off with the hose. I didn't like the water running in my shoes, and I'd go jump in the car. I mean, I had a 5 gallon bucket that was full of ice and water and some hand towels after the race. And after the race was over, like just any race, the Levi Garrett car, I'd get out of the car and my entire head went in that bucket. I couldn't even feel the heat. So I did a race one time with Jeff Bodine. I don't know, it was a 500 miler at Watkins Glen. Our competition, it was a brutal race. It was almost 100 degrees up there, 98% humidity. And with
Ooh.
Scott and Jack Roush, and I don't know who Scott's teammate was, but he was good. But Scott and Jack Roush were the toughest competition of all, always. Jeff Bodine was my teammate. We were because we were involved with Hendrick and all this stuff, right? And I got out of the car. I drove 2.5. I did the majority of the race because Jeff just couldn't do it. Jeff did a great job in the car. He really did. He kept the car in the lead, but he could only run a short one stint. And I'm laying out. I get out of the car, went over there, laid in the grass, opened my suit up, and they literally covered me with ice. I put a towel over my face. They covered me with ice. I I couldn't even feel it for a few minutes,
Well, right.
and
And
then I
like you
couldn't even
said,
feel the cold.
back in that
That's how
era,
hot my body
right.
was.
And those
So,
cars, I mean, those cars threw off a ton of heat.
well, they were 140. It was 135 to 140 in the car. So, and it was pretty radiant heat. I mean, a lot of things we developed. I was the first one to ever bring cold air into a helmet. I was the first guy to ever run memory foam in a seat. I developed with Bill Simpson, developed the Talon grip gloves because the normal gloves in those days, I would go through a set of gloves a weekend. And I called Bill. I said, "Bill, I'm going through these things. I'm just, it was so hot and it was so abrasive and everything was so rough that you had holes in your hands, and your hands were blistered, and your feet were blistered, and it was mind over matter. I mean, it was like, you when you trained, you thought about you put yourself in a mindset of 10 to go. What are you made of? What are you made of? And it came down to that. And how I came on the cold airs thing was I was at the end of the workout, I go in the sauna and I do like jumping jacks, or if it was big enough, I'd jump rope. And I was in the sauna one day and I said, if there was a air vent up there, like a duct, air conditioning duct, I put my face in front of that duct, would I know how hot it was? And I thought, I don't think so. I think I would breathe cool air, and I wouldn't know how hot it was. So that's what I called Bill
Right,
Simmons
because
up
your
and
head's
said, hey.
controlling it.
And they had the Parker pumper in the desert, right? But I didn't know anything about that. But we took a one of the helmets, we drill a hole in it, put a metal piece on it, and that it started. That's how it all began. And then there was a Carlson cool suit. We went down that road, just trying to get, cooling the driver. And because the whole idea was if you breathe a little bit of cool air, it would help you survive that. And you had to be ready for it. I mean, we had a doctor in Trans Am that he was a good guy, and I think he volunteered. I'm not sure, but he'd come around. He really cared, and I remember he'd have a drivers meeting with all the drivers on race morning, and he said, "Gentlemen, if you're not peeing clear by 11 o'clock, it's too late." So you started 3 or 4 days back of drinking 6 to 8 ounces of water every 40 minutes. That's what you did for live up to it. Didn't drink, no drink, alcohol, nothing, because it was that tough. It was that tough. And then, how bad do you want it? And it came down to that where you're done. You're totally done, but you dig deep. I don't know.
Right,
I
you gotta
think
have
they
something
dig
left.
deep. I think the drivers today dig deep. I think they do, but it's different. It's just different. There's margin now. The cars are much safer. The
Right,
tracks
it's
are much.
like, yeah, I feel like, to your point, Jack, I feel like when today's drivers dig deeper, their deeper is not the same level of
No.
yours or mine or someone
Well,
else's
you have
level
track.
of
First of all,
deep.
you have ABS brakes. You have traction control. You have all
Cool
kinds of
suits.
yaw control. You can adjust your traction control. I mean, there's a lot going
Right.
on there. I mean,
I'm sorry, but to me,
our
the best
traction
traction
control on
control
a
is in your
Trans
right
Am,
foot.
you can spin the tires anytime you want to spin them.
Right.
Anytime you want to spin them. I remember we were doing the World Sports Cars with George Robinson and that Riley and Scott Mark 6A, the one my favorite car. It had the 8 liter jug. Well, it wasn't an 8 liter then.
Yeah, that beautiful
It was a
prototype
5 liter
car.
jug. It had a 5 liter jug in it. And I mean, James was so you know, they ran that Lozano Ford. He was so fast and had so much torque. And I remember that we were going up on the banking on the last race of that series, and he'd always rev up the engine and dump the clutch, and it would always spin the tires. Well, this time he forgot to turn traction off, and the thing went da 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 da. I was like, son of a bitch. I said, I called it. I said, we caught him. He's been running traction on us all year, you know. But
Yep.
I mean, they were fast. But yeah, it's just different. I mean, being in race control now, when I was with SRO, I was spent a lot of time in race control. Well, we would talk about it, and back in the day, I mean, if you ran off a turn two at Mossport, I mean, you were done. Now
You were
they've
done.
got it
You were
all
probably in the
paved. You
fence.
can go out there and you can
I
actually come
know.
back and get your position back.
I know.
If
We
you ran
talked
off
about
a
that
turn
to a
one
couple
road,
of buddies of mine.
yeah, I mean, it's not bad. It's safer. It is safer, and it's interesting. The cars aren't the lap times are faster, but the cars aren't any faster. mile per
Right.
hour
And it's like,
wise, they were still going about the same
right.
speed, actually, you know.
Yeah. Well, and to that same point, Jack, it's like you've seen them pave the outside of two at Mossport, which used to be just all grass, and if you got in the grass, you were pretty much done. You were going for a ride, and it's kind of like when they first put the chicane in at Road America. Granted, it's mainly for motorcycles, but it's like, okay, if you can't go through the kink flat or in whatever means you can, and other tracks, it's like it's almost like, and I get that there's lawsuits and things have changed since the 80s and 90s, but it's like, come on, can we not try to kind of dumb this down to the lowest common denominator so we can include everybody? It's like, let's understand what we're all doing here.
Well, before they put the inner loop in at Watkins Glen, I did hundreds of miles of testing there with Goodyear and racing also. And there was a bump in the road, and the Levi Garrett car, the Camaro back in those years, that car would run when I asked them, I said, when I shut that thing off going into five, how fast am I going? They said, well, depending on the lap, you're going between 176 to 178. That's when you shut it down. There was a little crack in the road, boom, like a pavement change or something.
Hmm.
And when it hit that, you'd come off the throttle, start getting on the brake, toss the back end out, toss it out like a sprint, and you drift it in sideways, make a downshift, and throttle that thing into five. And I always thought, man, if something goes wrong, we're done. I mean, this thing gonna just, it never did. It never got out from under me. But that's where Tommy Kendall had the wreck. That's where he almost tore his leg off, right?
Right.
And also it was that NASCAR driver, I can't remember his name, but remember he went off there and died. And that's when they put the
Oh
interloop in.
yeah.
That's when they put the
Right.
interloop in. And
Was it not McDuffie? Was it?
so that, and of course, Daytona went in early because of the tires. You couldn't run the banking. I actually, in the very beginning, was one of the few people that ran some of those races, and that without the bus stop. I actually did it. I was in much slower cars. Now they were the GTP cars couldn't do it. There's too much load, on the tires. But I mean, we went to Charlotte, and I remember we ran Charlotte without an interloop, and that Levi Garrett car come off 175 miles an hour, sideways, drifting. Not sideways,
Oof.
sideways, but I mean, the back end was hung out, and I was working
You
the
could feel it.
throttle because it had lift, and you could work the throttle and spin the tires at that speed. At Road Atlanta, at the Black Flag station, where it used to go down into the Big Dip,
Hmm.
every single lap, the Levi Garrett car would drift. The back end would pick up, it would sit out, and the tack would go free, and you'd have to throttle it down into the big hole before they put 10A and 10B in. And I had to drive it down there like it, and it was 175 miles an hour. So when David Hobbs drove the car with me, and David drove it at Road America, comes in, he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this thing." I said, "David, listen, man, this thing will let you do it, but if it goes left, you got to go with it. You can't. You got to drive this thing. Just go with it. Just drift it." And so, if you couldn't drive a car sideways at 175 miles an hour, you couldn't drive the car. I mean, that's how it was.
Right.
Right.
You
I
couldn't
mean,
do it.
even though RX-7s were slower, we still drifted those cars. Drifted them around. They didn't have any. A lot of those cars had lift. They hadn't discovered the aero part, right? They had a little air dam, but they hadn't figured out that round part lifts the car at speed. So,
Yeah.
it was interesting being able to drive those cars like that. So Scott Pruitt and I, people ask me, they said, what's the toughest guy you ever run against? Well, for me, that's easy. Scott. Scott was, I mean, I thought, and I ran against pretty much all of them. And on any given day, any one of us could win the race. And if it was your day, it was your day, right? But I always felt like Scott was. There was us, and then there was Scott off to the side. He that kid was magic, and he really was good. He had a special knack for just old school, and then he, 10 years younger than I am, and he had that old school learn to feel the grip. That's the magic, right? The magic is learning to feel the grip. The new kids don't know about this. You ask a new driver, you ever heard that saying, learn to feel the grip? They go, nope, because they don't, because they have too many
They
driver
don't.
aids. They
And
don't.
they spend so much time on the simulator too.
So why was it that AJ and Mario and all those guys could go from a sprint car to a champ car to an Indy car to a stock car in the same week? Because and that's how I was, old school. You let the car tell you what you've got, and then you manage it. You manage it. So you manage, because the one thing we all have in common, all of us, we're managing four contact patches on asphalt, which is always changing. It's the variables are always changing. What they've done now with downforce and all the driver aids, they minimize the variables, right? They minimize them, and then they use them in a little different way, so they're much more efficient. Back in those days, depending on the car, so I was able to get out of a world sports car that would go, I mean, at Road Atlanta, I'm doing in the teens, and get into a Camaro, a Firehawk car, and just braking points were different, whole different, but let the car tell you, let the car, and you manage what you have. You learn to manage it. You learn to feel the grip, and that's how all those guys, did that. Um, Earnhardt was magic. He was. I'm going to tell you, there. I got some great IROC stories. Every I can tell
Lay
you,
them
there's
on
a
us,
lot of
man.
good drivers. Mark Martin and all those guys, Mark and Davey, and I mean, all those guys, Rusty, the Monty brothers, they were all very good race car drivers. I mean, very good. And they all had one thing in common. They all wanted to be like Dale. They all wanted to be, they got up every morning, brushed their teeth, look in the mirror and said, I want to be like Dale. And I said to Mark Bart one time, I said, Mark, what is it about, what is it? What's this deal? And he looked at me and he says, Jack, we don't know. We don't know how he does it. And they say he could see air. And I said to him, I was a kid with him all the time about that stuff. But I mean, I'm I'm sitting at Talladega and I'm seventh, right? And we've been running around in a train. You got to have a car go with you. You pop out of line, you got to have somebody go with you. If somebody doesn't go
Right, you
with you,
got to
you're
have a
going in the
partner.
back. You're going in the back. And you need more than one guy, really, but at least one has to go with you. So I'm sitting there and I'm running 193, 94 miles an hour. That's what we're doing. And all I can see is I can see a back window. I mean, we're all inches apart. And, you know, Dale, I'm, no, excuse me, I'm Dale, or I'm fourth, something like that, right? And I keep peeking out. Everybody's peeking out, trying to do something. And it's been a while, and we're running around, and somebody's got to do something, right? So I remember that day. We were going into one. We just crossed the stripe. We're going into one. Dale, two cars back. He drops down the inside, and I said to myself, I'll never forget it. I said, where the hell does he think he's going? There ain't no way, because nobody went with him. Nobody went with him. He comes by next. He pulls out. I look back straight. I figure he's going backwards. I said, well, I don't have to worry about Dale. Next thing I know, he's next to me, next to the next guy, next to the next guy. And by the middle of turn 1, 2, he pulls up. I'm fifth. He's first. How the hell did he do that? I asked him. He just laughed. That little smirk, that little smile he had, that little smirk. I can't tell you everything. It's like, I don't understand there's a side drive, but how the hell did you do that? And that's when I realized right then and there, I said, you know what, Dale? Every time you look in the mirror, you're going to see me. I don't care where you go. I'm going with you. You hit the wall, I'm going to hit the wall. And I did. From that point on, I'd get in the car and I'd look back and I'd say, what color is he? Because you couldn't, it's hard to see. So it was colors, right? So I'd go, all right, what color Dale's got? Dale's got a yellow car. Okay, okay, yellow. I knew it was coming. And when it came, I'm getting behind it. That's it. And I remember we were at, I think, Daytona, and the longest line is the fastest line. So there was a long line, there was a pretty long second line, and somehow or another, I was in the inside line. I was in pretty good shape. I was running fifth or something like that. I'm in pretty good shape. And I see Dale get spit out. And so there's two long lines of Dale. And I said, hell yeah. I dropped out of line. This takes a lot of balls. I dropped out of line, pulled up behind Dale, hit him in the ass. Boom. And we went right to the damn back. We went right to the back. And I was like, son of a bitch. And Dale and I, we were way back. And we ended up coming back and taking the lead back. Two of us. It's unbelievable.
How long did it take you to do that?
Oh,
How many
I
laps?
mean, it probably took us 10 laps. But he kept pounding on me and pounding on and pounding on me. And later I said, I thought you said don't hit each other in the turns. He said, I knew you could handle it. Because in the turns, he would come up, and I mean, you had to put your head against the seat. I'm telling you, when you see those little bumps, that's not
That ain't
like
nothing.
boom. That's like boom, and you put your head on the, and I mean, yeah, he'd hit you, and you the car would drift up, and you kind of go. You got to be careful. Go with it, bring it back, then he hit you again, and kept boom, 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 and we went back to the front. Unbelievable, unbelievable. That was magic. He was magic, and when Mark told me that, Mark said, "We don't know." I said, "Seriously?" I said, "What's the deal?" He said, "We don't know, but it's something." So yeah,
Yeah.
it was wonderful. So
Well, and it's like, I was thinking too, as you're telling that story, leading into it about, especially with the young kids, just not reading and feeling what the car is giving you. It's like, I've said this 100 times, if not more, when I'm teaching, whether it's down at Porsche at the Barber Motorsports Park, or even
hmm
with the AMG stuff. It's like so many people, and I'm sure too, when you were instructing more, Jack, that people would be like, "Oh, I wish I could just stay in that one car all day long because I like it," or whatever, instead of driving two or three or four different models of cars. And I said in the same thing. I'm like, do you understand how guys like Unser and Andretti and Foyt and all these guys got good at their craft and became the legends that they are? It's because they drove everything and they learned a little bit about each of these cars that they took with them and stacked when they moved from the stock car to the sprint car to the Pikes Peak car to the sports car at Daytona and Indy cars and on dirt or a pavement or whatever. They used all that so they could feel what the car was doing. And I think especially with what I know about you, it's like I think back to your early days when you started off in Formula Ford and you had mismatched tires. I mean, you kind of had no
oh yeah,
choice but to read what the car was telling you.
exactly. I mean, and that you just drove to the max of what you had, and that's all you had. It's it's crazy now with the driver aids. It's different. You mentioned Barber and the Porsche, you know, Porsche driving experience. I mean, Hurley and I we turn everything off because we didn't like it. We turn everything off and
Right.
go out there and haul ass. But nobody else turns stuff off. You leave. You don't do that. But the kids today are good, but they're good in a different way. I mean, first of all, simulators. I can't do a simulator. I'm sorry. I've tried simulators. So like, I I don't. Oh, it's realistic. Well, I'm taking a lot of readings from a lot of different places. It's not just a visual read, and there's no way it's the same. Guys are they use some guys are good at it and they use it very well. But between that and all the driver aids, I remember I had a driver tell me, a good young driver, I won't mention his name, but he told me, he said, the problem we have now is it's hard for them to know who's the best because they're being told put it on six, put it on four, put it on three, put it on the seven. you know, the all the adjustments, right? Because
Right, right.
they're looking at all that telemetry. And how do you know what driver's the best driver? Is it the one that follows the instruction the best? I don't know. Or when it goes to a certain place, they drive to that level. I mean, I'm not saying the cars today aren't hard to drive, but they're it's not the same. It's there's too many aids. I mean, and the aids are
Well,
good. I mean, you think about a
right.
car with a lot of horsepower. You've driven a lot of cars, Kevin. You think about you just come out of you just hit your mark, come out of the corner, and bury the throttle. Just sit there with your foot. Don't move your. Just I'd have a hard time with that, you know. But you just and then
Well,
let the
right.
car do whatever it does.
Right. Let the traction control take over and do its
You
thing.
let the trash
And
control
it's
take
like,
over.
yeah, I
I
actually we just did a program out at Sonoma Raceway for Mercedes, and I was sort of lead instructor for the weekend. And you can relate to this, I know, Jack, because like when you get to the higher levels of the program, whether it's a Mercedes deal, a Porsche deal, or any other manufacturer, at some point you're going to start looking at data, right? And for data, you've got to have a reference lap, and it's always one of the instructors that sets the data lap, and everybody can compare, so you can look at trends from braking trace and throttle and steering trace and all that stuff. So as we got into our highest level program out there, we had students that were running damn near the same lap times as our instructor reference lap. And I finally had to kind of come down on them and I said, you guys are doing this not because you're driving great. It's because you're driving a 600 horsepower car, you're chucking it into the corner, and you're just letting the systems do all the work for you. If you
right.
had any one of those things fail or you shut it off, you'd probably be in the fence. So, how about you back it off a notch and work on developing your skill and your ability to feel what the car is doing so that you're not just constantly, burning up, the brakes because the ESP is picking up the rear brake to keep you straight or, take throttle away from you and do all this other stuff. How about you work on that instead of just driving the rat shit out of the car all the time?
100%, 100%. And that's why I think the Miata, I think the Miatas, they still, I don't know if they have stuff now, but early on, that was a real good way to do it. I mean, honestly, Trans Am cars were like that. There was no driver aid, none.
Right.
When I first drove, listen, when I first drove, GTP cars didn't have anything. Um, uh, World Sports Cars didn't have it. When I drove the Riley and Scott, the Mark threes, it was a steering wheel, a shifter, and seat. There, go out and drive it. It was you know, a fast, open cockpit race car. And I remember when
Yeah.
they first brought sequential shifter. We were at Mid Ohio, and they where you didn't have to shift it. You could just pull it like a motorcycle, like boom, boom, boom. So and then it went from there to the paddles. We had paddles at the last year, but it still didn't have like we didn't have traction control or any of that stuff. You had to manage your tires and you had to deal with it. And so yeah, I mean, it's come a long way. I was thinking about this. I was thinking, how far it's come from in my career in my years in motorsports, and then I wonder what it's for guys like AJ and Mario that are, I mean, they what they drove to now, so it's got to be mind-boggling. I speaking about that. I mean, early on when I was U.S. Formula Ford champion. I was 23. I did it on my own, all by myself. I didn't have any money. I did everything. I'd come down and change gears on pit road. Get back in the car, and I didn't own the car. And motor was borrowed. Yeah, I was making it work. Me and I mean, it was tough. Bruce McGinnis and I were same way. Bruce the same way. And
Sure.
I had a chance to drive Indy cars. I had a chance to drive, and there was an IndyCar team in Atlanta.
Really?
There
I
was a
did not know
Buick
that.
team. Yeah, there was an IndyCar team. It was who was it? I can't remember. But it was a big IndyCar team down on Howell Mill Road, and Hopkins was the team. Hopkins, and he was a
Lindsay
big car
Hopkins?
dealer. Lindsey Hopkins. Lindsey Hopkins owned
I
a big
remember that
IndyCar name,
name.
but they were
Yeah.
down on. And I think who was that driver out of? His driver was IndyCar driver out of Texas. Anyway, he was for years, and I went down and talked to him, and they were looking at it, and I had a chance to do that. Um, but the problem was, in those years, everyone's getting their legs tore off, and people were getting
That's
killed.
true.
Gordon Smiley was killed, and somebody else was killed,
Yep.
and
Up in
it
Milwaukee
was.
when you saw Ungaius and all
I
those
mean,
guys.
you're talking. Ungaius had a bad wreck. I'm sitting there watching that. Well, your feet were in front of the front axle. It's hard to believe. I mean, Rick, you look at them all. Rick Mears, Poncho Carter, AJ. I mean, a few of them escaped. Mario got lucky. He maybe because he was so little. I don't know. But
Yeah, that could be.
I mean, but I thought to myself, if I do this, why wouldn't I crash like the rest of them, learning? Well, the answer to that is, yeah, you'd crash. You're going to crash. And I knew I was brave. I knew I'd do it. And I just decided, if something happens to me like that, I'm done for the rest of my life. I'm done. And because my parents didn't have any money, I didn't have any money. If I'd had a bad injury, it'd be over. We wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. So I
Yeah,
just
right.
decided I was just like, and so many guys were getting tore up and hurt and bad hurt. And I just decided it was not, it's that error. Scott Pruitt came in 10 years later, and cars were different. They were safer. There was still that error. There was still that, they weren't real like they are now, but, they were better and
But
a
even he
lot
got
better.
hurt in an IndyCar.
Yeah. I
Even
mean,
he got hurt in
so
the IndyCar.
even what?
He had that big crash. Even Scott got hurt in the IndyCar.
Oh, Scott got hurt really
Even though
bad.
it was years.
Yeah, real bad.
Yeah, I was actually at that track like right after that test when that happened.
Yeah. I mean, and just something broke, boom, he went in and it took him years to get back. And, very fortunate. He was able, sheer determination got him back. And I bet he still feels that injury. I'm sure he does. I know Tommy Kendall does. And it wasn't an
Oh
Indy
yeah,
car,
I
but
mean I talk to those guys pretty often,
I mean, Tommy, I'm sure his leg probably gives him a lot of trouble now. And
especially
I
when the
met
weather
Tommy, he was a
changes.
teenager. I met Tommy at Riverside. He was a teenager. His dad
Hmm.
came over and he said, "Would you come over and talk to my two sons?" I said, "Sure." And there they were. And he had three sons, but two of them were there wanted to be racers. And so, and that's how long I've known Tommy. And I met Scott. We were at Sonoma running GTU, and they said, "We're going to bring the kid. We're bringing this kid around. He's a go kart champion. We're going to bring this kid around and introduce him to everybody." And they brought Scott Pruitt around, and he was a pleasant kid, and his dad. And that was the beginning of Scott Pruitt. That was the beginning of that era, that whole thing. And then he showed up, and he was good. He was real good, and you could see that early on. He made a lot of good choices. Got on with Ford, and then he got on with Chevy. And I mean, Scott was good, and he was smart. Had a great career. Great career. We're good
Yeah,
friends. Yeah, we're good
I know.
friends.
I know. It was like
Even though it took us
when I saw
years
you
to
at Road Atlanta.
make up. We finally made up after the Columbus thing. So um, the wreck, and he finally admitted he did it on purpose. He had to. But I said, "Hey, you little son of a bitch!" I said, "If that hadn't happened, if you hadn't taken me out, I'd have won that race. I'd have won the championship. I'd have gone to IROC earlier, and I'd probably be a stock car racer, which is what I wanted to be in the beginning. So, and I probably would have had a great career." And I said, "But that's the way it happened. So you always look back and you know, be thankful what you have, not what you don't have. So,
Well, that's
um,
right.
I've
And at
known,
least you
I've
got.
known, I remember I grew up in Tampa, and I remember going over to Daytona and sitting down in front of, it might have been Bill France. I think it was Bill France, his vice president. And I just said, "Hey, I'm Jack Baldwin for Tampa, and I want to be a race car driver." It's like, you know, just a kid with a dream and, desire, and away you went, you know, it was crazy.
Right.
I moved to Road
Oh, I
Atlanta.
agree.
I moved to Atlanta when they built Road Atlanta because I couldn't afford to go
Yeah,
back
that
and
was
forth. It was 1,000 miles. So,
yeah.
you know, couldn't afford it. So,
Yeah, if
I
anybody
mean,
knows
it's
Road
been,
Atlanta, it's you.
yeah, I mean, and you have, you have years of memories and all different stuff, and it's good, and I like working with the young kids. I did that in SRO. I worked with a lot of young guys, and like you, Kevin, I did a lot of driving instruction through the years, so that was good. Spent a lot of time in
Well, now
Porsches.
oh yeah, you do definitely have a lot of time in Porsches, and now spending some time at that new place of yours up in North Georgia, there riding your dirt bikes around and having a good time with that.
Well, it came down to, we did that Cayman program at the end, and you know, my efforts with the Cayman brought the club sport. Porsche would have never done it. Porsche was not planning to do any of that ever, and we were so successful with the Inter Series, um, and we because we built like 75 cars, and other people built the cars, and they were great little race cars. The whole story behind that, and then we decided to take the Cayman Pro Racing, and I had some great people around me, and we got into that car and we developed it on our own without help from Porsche at all. In fact, Porsche got in our way,
Oh,
and it was that car was phenomenal. The car's still around. I mean, there's one of a kind. It's Israelhausen owns the car, and that
I
car
know
was
him.
highly developed. And I had, Tilton built me a special clutch. Um, uh, Dennis Halsey's brother, he was involved, and he built me special flywheels. Steve Ruiz was my engineer. He was genius. I had all kinds of cool stuff in that car, and we paved the way for that whole series. Now, my last race, I had a great race team. My last race was at Laguna Seca, and I was 60 years old. Put it on the pole and broke two track records, and finished second. BOP got me, and Chris
Fucking
Wilson said,
BOP.
"Did I make that look okay?" I said, "Well, you did the best you could, Chris. Jeez, And so he was Aston Martin, and but anyway, it was good, and we couldn't go any further because Porsche wasn't ready, and things happened. But that was a great run of years, right? And I was going to run for a couple more years and then put some young guys in. That was my plan, and because here's the deal. I mean, I would say to myself, I'd say, well, I know my car's capable, and if I can't get the job done, I hate to have to fire myself. So,
Right.
I mean, because I ran the team, I owned the team, and I ran the team. I had a partner, but it was my decision, and I used to go out there and say, and so in our last 40 races, we were on the pole 16 times. We won 8. We should have run 15. Uh, but out of 40, we were on the pole 16 times. We were on the front row like 25 times. We were on the podium 32 times out of 40. So it was a good run with that car. And in the end, Porsche admitted that if they'd helped me just a little bit, I would have done a lot better. But in
Yeah,
spite
yeah.
of
You
all that,
think?
we did real good, and it was fun, and I enjoyed those years. I mean, it's funny in the end of the deal, it's like I learned. You don't learn your skill. You don't learn. I tell the guys, I said, listen, you don't lose your skill. You actually get better. I felt like my best years of driving, I was so precise, and I could read everything so well. My last 5 years, I felt were my best years as far as I could put that car on the mark, boom. And, but you do lose durability. You do lose durability. You don't lose your skill, but durability you lose. So you have to work hard to offset that, right? So,
Right.
um, and and I did, because I would train for 2 hours because the race was an hour, and the race would usually go a little longer than that. So you train so you did CrossFit for 2 hours, if you could, and that was a thing. So, and then, so an hour was easy. That was pretty tough. So, in
Right.
those years, and you know, like you're saying, it's like, is it harder then? I mean, I was the only guy shifting. Everybody else was using paddles, and I still had a six-speed gearbox. So, I remember we went to sell that car. They said, we got
Yeah.
one
Fuck
problem,
those
Jack.
guys.
Nobody knows how to shift anymore. The young kids don't know how to shift. I didn't. Kevin, you know that, right?
Right.
The young drivers, even the young good drivers, they never drove a stick shift car.
They have no clue. No clue.
Think about it. They don't know they don't know, never. I've talked to a bunch of them that are good drivers. I said, you ever drive a stick shift? They said, no, we don't know how to, I don't know how to drive
Yeah.
one.
I have no idea what that is.
I,
Oh
wow,
man. Y-
it's
Yeah. Wow
unbelievable.
is right. And I got to tell you, Jack. I mean, I have absolutely loved kind of this the way this conversation's gone. I would love to have you come back on for another show at another time where we can kind of talk some more about some of those other cool stories that we really didn't get into. But talking to another racer that has kind of that same mentality that I was thinking was kind of it is very refreshing that I'm not losing my mind that somebody else thinks the same way that I do. So could we
Yeah,
get you
I
back on
mean,
another time? We can get into some other stories.
sure, sure, I'd come back and talk to you. I mean, I enjoy it. It's good to do. Dorsey would be good. You ever had Dorsey on your show?
I haven't had Dorsey, but Dorsey and I had some great conversations when he was one of the stewards when I was running World Challenge. So yeah, he's another guy that I would love to have come on the show. Maybe we get the
Dorsey.
three of us on and we can have a roundtable.
Dorsey's he's pretty colorful. He's a colorful character, and he's got some
Oh,
great
you are
stories
too,
too.
Jack. We've only scratched the surface with you.
Yeah, well, that's probably true. But yeah, Kevin, call me. Get me back. I'll be happy to do this for you. I mean, I enjoy it. I hope people like the stories, and you know, it's sort of a life
Jack,
well
I can tell
lived.
you.
It's sort of a guy that chased his dreams, and what did I want to do in life? I wanted to be a race car driver. I mean, every counselor at school, they'd say, well, what, the guidance counselor, you go and say, so what do you want to do? I go, I want to be a race car driver. They go, what? I want to be a race car driver. He
Right.
goes, well, you know what? It's like, I said, well, I could lie to you and tell you I want to be like a bank guy or something, but I don't, that's not what I want to do. So
Well, it's funny
I
you
kind
say
of did
that
what I
because
wanted to do, and it kind of worked out.
yeah, when I told my family that that's what I wanted to do is be a race car driver, I had several factions of my family say to me like, "Okay, so when are you going to go get a real job?" I'm like,
That's exactly
this,
right.
this,
When you go get a real job, and that's what they think a real job is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not easy. It's easier if you got a lot. If you've got a lot of talent, desire, really, you got to be hungry. You got to be hungry, and
and you
you
got to
need
have
the
some
money.
money.
You have to have the money. That's
That's
another thing.
exactly right.
I mean, I made all these deals. I did the Hot Wheels deal. I dreamed up that car. I got Levi Garrett. I got Budweiser. I had to go out and find. If I didn't hunt, if I didn't, I had to hunt because otherwise I wouldn't eat. So I was always looking for, so all those deals, I did all of them through the years. I mean, the Hot Wheels deal,
So,
I just dreamed it up. I dreamed it up one day. I mean, I'd come up with
dude,
about one or two good ideas a year. So it was a whole story on that. But I mean, we had to find sponsorship, and we did it. And you still, I mean, and Goodyear was behind me. If it hadn't been for Goodyear, they were always in my corner. They would. I was lucky enough to be one of their selected drivers. So that was a pivotal thing as having Goodyear on my
so
side
Jack,
because I could.
you got to save some of those stories because I want to get back with you and have a whole
All
segment where we
right.
can talk about the ins and outs of the Budweiser deal and the Hot Wheels deal and the Goodyear stuff. I don't want to get too far out over my skis here because I want
Okay.
to make
Cool.
sure we get that all at one time. So let's do this again really really soon because I can't tell you how much I appreciated having you on today. I
Well,
know we've been talking about making this happen for a while, and thank you so much. Like I said at the top of the show, you're one of the guys I have the utmost respect for. Old school racer. Those are the kinds of guys that I really kind of gravitate towards, and I appreciate your friendship over all these years and everything that you've done, Jack.
well, I appreciate that, Kevin. Same goes here. You know, I got a lot of respect for you, and you're a quality individual. So, you know, I'm glad our paths crossed and we became friends. And I'll be happy to come on anytime. Just, you know, you got my number. Get a hold of me.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
flexible. You know,
All right. You can
I'm
count on it,
flexible to
my
get it.
friend.
All right,
You can
buddy.
count on it. We're
Thanks,
going to
pal.
talk again really soon. You got it. Take care,
Okay,
Jack. Thanks
Kevin.
again for being on the Seventh
Thank
Gear
you.
Over Rev show this week. We'll talk to you again soon. All right, Seventh
All
Gear
right,
Over
buddy.
Rev fans. As you know, we got a whole lot going on here. We've just recorded our second show of the day today. We want to make sure that if you like what you heard today with the Jack Baldwin interview or the others that we're doing, make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button here on our YouTube channel. And let's also not forget to support our great friends and partners over at Kraus Meats. Always top quality since 1923, purveyors of the finest sausages and processed meats anywhere around. Make sure that you visit their website at krausmeats.com to take advantage of the new lower prices for your late summer and early fall grilling needs, as well as our great friends and partners over at Respect Your Package and Dick Carriers, makers of those ultra high-end men's premium breathable underwear with ball bustier technology. Respectfully scandalous, but unapologetic. Make sure when you go to the respectyourpackage.com website that you enter the promo code RESPECT7 for your 20% discount off your entire order. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, as we throw the checkered flag here on this week's episode of the Seventh Gear Over Rev Show, make sure that you stay tuned with us each and every week rather, on our YouTube channel, as well as the audio only, for the latest in the greatest spectacle in podcasting. See ya.